Two, three. Can we hear me? I'm on. We're live. All right, everybody. Well, we're going to just roll right in as people gather along. We know it's just came from lunch, and so we're going to keep it flowing, keep it light as we segue into the session. So thank you so much for being here. I'm David Mack. My pronouns are he, him. I'm the executive director of Artist Magnet Justice Alliance. We're an Oakland-based art service and membership organization that supports emerging artists and arts administrators in Oakland, the Bay Area, and throughout California with services such as fiscal sponsorship, financial service support, bylaws, legal contracts and invoice support, things that artists often don't want to think about or stress them out to do. These are things that I and colleagues like to do, so it's a match made in heaven. So that's the type of work that we support. We also support advocacy efforts and conversations like these. So Artist Mag Justice Alliance is happy to be hosting this conversation with these esteemed panelists and some others on our team that you'll get a chance to interact with during this hour. So I'll just share a little bit about what you all can expect. So this is called Whistleblow, Restorative Justice in the Arts Community. And then I'll share with you the agenda of what you can expect throughout this hour. So for this session, it's in tandem and dovetailing off the theme of health and wellness in our communities. And for those of you who got to hear Dr. Maria Rosario Jackson speak this morning, really, from what I gathered, really powerful comments and reflections that I think put me in the right frame of mind to think about the idea of what does it really mean to be healthy and well as an artist, an aspiring artist, or an established artist or arts administrator in California in this field in this day and time. And one of the things that, there were golden gems all throughout that conversation, but one of the things that resonated with me is when Julie Baker asked her about how do we get people to see the value of what we do, and how she talked about making it personal, and she talked about making people care about why this work is important. And I think that that is so important. And I feel like the conversation, I'm hoping what we can gather from the conversation that we all are going to have is a springboard from that foundation that was set. And the idea of finding true health and wellness in our field and truly making people care about what we do also includes when we cause harm or when we cause trauma to people in the field, that we address it, that we speak out and speak up and seek restorative justice for those in our field who have been harmed, who are experiencing a toxic environment. And that is how we are going to get to breaking down the barriers of people who may have reservations about why we're doing what we're doing, the value of what we're doing, the benefit of what we're doing, and our goal towards health and wellness. And in summary, the statement really is, we feel you only really can truly achieve health and wellness if you do that, if you seek restorative justice when harm is caused. And so we don't have time to get deep into all the aspects of this conversation in this time, so we're hoping that you will receive this as just the beginning of conversations. You'll hear some sharings, you'll hear some best practices. There are resources that they told us to put in the app, so if you have the app downloaded and you go to our Whistleblow session, there in the description, you click the down arrow, you'll see links to resources, including California Lawyers for the Arts resources, resources from our company, Artist Magnet, Glassdoor, an organization to share testimonials about previous employers, and The Living Document, which is a Bay Area-based essentially blog about experiences that artists had in the Bay Area in recent years in their workplaces. Okay, so So in terms of the agenda, so we're going to kick it off in a moment with a somatic ground to get us all in the frame of mind and set the tone that we want to set so we can be supportive of our panelists as they do their sharings. And then we will have a live poetry reading from an amazing poet that I'll introduce in a second. And then once we have our reading, then I will introduce briefly our panelists one at a time and ask them to share name, pronouns if you'd like, visual description if you'd like, and information about your work and what you do, and then do your sharings. And then we will close this part of the program and then open it up for you all at your tables to have reflections with each other on what you've heard. And you might share a word or a sentence about how what you heard made you feel. And it will only be about 15 minutes probably towards the end to do that. So just the beginnings of that sharing and give you a chance to reflect that in the moment. And then we're off to the next adventure. All right? Is that all good for y'all? You cool? All right. A little bit more of housekeeping. This session, our panelists and some of you all in the room may be recorded. We have a wonderful videography team, that's Sabor over there, doing our videography. Thank you for being here and doing that. And also we have audio description services. We are providing audio description via wireless headset, described live by Gabrielle Christian of Gravity Access Services. See them waving back there. They will be speaking into a special muffled microphone mask, so you may occasionally hear some slight background sound. If you are a member of the blind or low vision community, you can feel free to take advantage of this service now by going back to the back of the room to Gabrielle. And even if you are not a member of the community, we encourage you to try it out. If you haven't tried out audio description, you can feel free to take advantage of the service, as we feel it's a unique way to experience this event and build empathy with that community. All right, so you can feel free to do that now if you would like. Also want to give a shout out to our associate producer, Mrs. Thomas in the house. Thomas, who's done an amazing job logistically putting all this together. You know, we all don't just come and do this 15 minutes before this starts, y'all. This is weeks and weeks of planning and coordinating that makes it at least months, right? Months to put it together. And everybody's got other gigs, so much appreciated. And thank you, Tom. And this is Thomas's first summit, so welcome. Thomas will be taking some photos of us during the hour. And did I miss anything? I think that's all the housekeeping. I think that's enough before we do the introduction. So, any questions before we go? All right. We are going to segue into our somatic grounding, which will be led by a wonderful Bay Area-based artist, Jhia Jackson. So, Jhia, so good to see you. I'm going to give it to you to do a further introduction of yourself and then guide us through this grounding.
Okay.
And I'll be right here.
Great. If I put this microphone down, will it squeal?
It might.
Okay, awesome.
Let's test it and see.
Okay, apologies, everyone. Success. Hi, my name is Jhia Jackson. I also go by JJ. I use she or they series pronouns. I'm wearing an amazing russet flowy jumpsuit with a gold belt and gold glitter eyeshadow that also matches the gold trails in my braids. And today I've put together a kind of short and sweet somatic grounding to offer you. I thought about the topic of this workshop and my own personal experiences and what I would really want to be able to be present in this space, knowing that my body might be having reactions that might cloud my ears and brain from being open and receiving what's going on. And so sort of like the theme for this is a heart that's open and protected, a mind that is clear and focused, a body that is safe in knowing and remembering. No one ever told me that grief felt so like fear. I am not afraid, but the sensation is like being afraid. The same fluttering in the stomach, the same restlessness, the yawning. I keep on swallowing. That is an excerpt from C.S. Lewis. On your table, there are roses, there's spearmint, there's tea. This is all for you. You can use it throughout this experience. You can also take it home with you. Rose is something that's often given to people during times of grief or extreme emotional distress. A rose is supposed to symbolize a heart that is open with thorns for protection. A rose is beautiful in its blossoming, it's beautiful in its flowering, it's beautiful in its decay. A rose has to be clipped and removed from the bush in order for that bush to keep growing and thriving. We also have tulsi and spearmint. Spearmint is the literal soft herb that's on your table. Tulsi is one of the teas that you have. These are in the mint family, and they're supposed to be really, really great for short-term stress responses. They help navigate digestion, stress, and tulsi in particular is really good for helping with having a clear focus and memory, even through traumatic experiences. So I encourage you to touch, squeeze, smell, roll, put them in your bag, give them to your friend. I have extra tea, I have extra petals, I have extra spearmint, I have extra roses. We are in a space of abundance, so please take, please share, please give. And I know some of y'all in this room know about bell hooks, all about love. My work that I am in the midst of doing and putting on for these past few years, Rosewater Sundays, is really inspired by bell hooks' work. And so I have two quotes to sort of bookend a physical movement practice I'd like for you to do with me. To be loving is to be open to grief, to be touched by sorrow, even sorrow that is unending. To love well is the task in all meaningful relationships, not just romantic bonds. Thank you so much, and if you need me, I'll be in the back corner, anxiously waiting.
Thank you, Jhia. Yeah. Exactly. I know that's what I needed to get the nervous energy released and get me into that right frame of mind. So how are we feeling now? We're feeling ready to receive some more as we go into the session? All right, so much appreciation again, and definitely make sure that you find Jhia to find out more about her work and how you can support her wonderful work that she does, or if you'd like to have her support sessions that you might have with somatic grounding experiences. It really makes a difference for us. So now, are we ready? Are we ready, Brian? Okay, we're going to segue into the next part of the session where we are going to have a awesome, influential, impactful, live poet, Brian Sonia-Wallace, a Rent poet, LA-based poet, who is going to grace us with a poem he made just for us in our event. So I'll invite Brian to the stage to introduce himself further.
Thank you, Dave. My name is Brian Sonia-Wallace. I use he and they pronouns. I am tall as hell. I have a blue shirt that matches my eyes. And I think that so much of poetry and the work that we do in poetry is about saying the unsayable. And it was really interesting when Dave asked me to be a part of this session. I was like, I don't know if that's really my themes. I don't know if that's what I work on. And the deeper I got into the poem, the more I found those experiences in myself, and the more I felt this connection with those experiences. So I hope that you all enjoy the piece. Spoken word rules. If you hear something that you like, feel free to snap. Can I hear what that sounds like? Feel free to go, like you just ate some really good cookies. Both of those are tools. Please use them liberally. This can be church, not a college seminar. May I present to you a thesaurus of hurt. C, scrappy. C, trying. I was 22 the first time I asked for mentorship and was told to take off my shirt, but I had my first poems published. C, under-resourced. C, alone. I was 24 the first time I was told I could keep my job if I could raise my salary each week through cold calls, but I produced my first play. How much are you willing to suffer for the sake of your art? C, Shenyang. In Shenyang, they tell the performers their flawless dance will save or damn the audience's souls, that they are responsible for the salvation of the universe. Keep dancing. C, art can save your life. C, art is a cult. It's not forced labor if it's your religion. It's not forced labor if you're persecuted too. Too much of any remedy is the poison. Again, we're all a family here. C, many hats. C, dream. We sell one another a house of hurt. Plant flowers to cover the cracks in the foundation. It sucked, but it made me a better artist. It sucked, but it helped my career. The hand on the thigh, the newly discovered day before deadline, even the most skilled dancer cannot fly. C, resourceful. I was 25 when I traded my last full-time job for never having another boss, which means having 100 bosses. C, community. I was 30 when I thought, am I in the cult now? Am I in it so deep I can't get out? I am 35 and I am just learning that I can fire my bosses. I am 35 and I am learning the world will not end if I stop dancing. See resilience. See canary in a coal mine, the songbird that miners brought underground as they chipped the sun from fossils, releasing toxic gas. The bird, more sensitive to poisoned air, would gasp its dying and with its songs passing, provide a warning. We cannot stay where the smallest of us cannot breathe. A canary has no board of directors, no HR department. No one's in the business of funding birdsong. Its stage is tree and sky. We pound the doors of justice and are told, it's a nice idea, but there's no money in the budget for flight. See, invoice due on receipt. See, now. See now, see now. We're artists, scrappy, many-hatted dreamers. We know how to work a dime. Our hands crack, voices bleed. May I present to you a thesaurus of remedies. Power is power, work is work. We speak the world we want to see into being. Insist on it, demand better, no one else will. Do you hear that singing? From deep in the mine. Isn't it funny? It's when no one is forcing you to that you want to dance. The etymology of ensemble is all at the same time. May I present to you a thesaurus of courage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. I don't know, did any of that speak to any of you? Whew, some of that hit me. I'm moderating this thing. You hit me right there. So thank you, Brian. Thanks so much for doing that. And Brian, I'm sorry, if you can just shout, I brought you down too soon. Will you tell people how they can find you if they want to get more about your work? Thank you, Brian. All right, and we're going to do the analog version of moving to next slide. Okay, while we talk. Or the version of, okay, yeah. So, and this is our whistleblow flyer. Some of you may have seen on social media that we'll have up now as we go to the next part of our conversation. So now we've had our somatic grounding. We've had some art. Can't get enough art in these types of events, right? So we've had our memorable artistic experience, and so now we're going to open it to our panelists for sharing. So as I mentioned, I'm going to introduce them one at a time. For our first two panelists, I'll ask them to share about their experiences finding empowerment and finding their voice in their respective fields along their artistic journeys. And again, encouraging you to receive their sharings with an open heart, open mind, and deep listening. And then our third panelist will ask to reflect in the moment on those experiences and share some advocacy efforts was done in the world of LA theater. Then finally, we'll talk about support for legal rights and resources for artists and arts administrators. All right. So the first person who will be speaking is Gabriel Montoya, a performing artist and director based in Los Angeles, but who's California, including in the Bay Area for years. So very seasoned performer and has agreed to come and share a little bit of words with us. So I'll let you further introduce yourself and go rolling.
Good afternoon, folks. Thanks for being here. My name is Gabriel Montoya. For a visual... sure, let me give that a shot. Trigger warning, I'm going to talk about sexual assault and white supremacy, if that bothers you. There's the door. My name's Gabriel Montoya. Visual description, I'm a man wearing a white suit that makes his beautiful brown skin and big brown eyes pop. I'm a Los Angeles-based Mexican-American actor, director, writer, and producer with theatrical roots right here in Sacramento, and a 7-year stint living and working in San Francisco. I've worked for Sacramento's B Street Theater, Berkeley Rep, and San Francisco's Magic Theater, to name a few. I'm not here today because of what happened to me. I'm here today because of what I did about it. In 2013, I moved to San Francisco to get married to my wife and creative partner, Robin Fontaine, and make as many plays as we could. The following year, during the run of my first show in San Francisco, the producer-director in charge of the show caught me alone in the dressing room and was, let's call it, physically inappropriate. The details are unnecessary for our purposes. Despite getting him to back off in the moment, I was frozen by what had occurred. Not just because he's much bigger than me, standing about 6'3" to my 5'8 3/4" on a good day, and outweighing me by about 100 pounds, but it was the power dynamics. This was my first show in San Francisco. I'm non-union. This man was and is a well-known producer, director with several high-profile hits with his popular theater over the years. This particular show was the hit of this particular season. The last thing I wanted was a reputation as a troublemaker if this guy decided to throw me under the bus rather than own up to what he'd done. Beyond calling the police, I felt there was no recourse. There were no witnesses. It was just him and I alone in a dressing room. And since it was a non-union show, I had no shop steward to call to mediate this awkward situation. The local theater organization, Theater Bay Area, is not built for this sort of thing. So I told him, never do that again, packed the incident away inside of me, and finished out my contracted run of the show. In a way, I convinced myself that it never really even happened. Over the years, I'd warned people away from working on the show, but except for my wife, I told no one specifically what had happened to me. But this person and the damage they and the culture they created around their show were impossible to avoid while working in San Francisco. Actors who had bad experiences with them could be found talking about it any place actors gathered. Bars, parties, theaters, audition rooms, you name it. My production lasted 6 months. It featured close to 40 actors and musicians in it, with each position turning over many times. Then the show reopened in a dedicated space and ran for 2 years. In 2018, a Bay Area theater artist named Tracy Camp called out this show for its racist casting practices in a Facebook post in a Bay Area theater group. The post went viral. Her charge was that despite having a cast of nearly 40, with very few exceptions such as myself, they were only casting white actors. In the show, I didn't play Mexican. I had to be a Sicilian in order to fit with this person's version of what 1923 in San Francisco looked like. Apparently, we didn't exist in a city that we named. The post went viral, and the accusations about the show grew. Soon after the viral Facebook post, several people connected to the show, myself included, began talking on the record with San Francisco Chronicle's theater critic, Lily Janiak, about the abuses we suffered. Up to 30 people spoke to her on and off the record. Her editors ultimately decided to not print the story because the worst offenses couldn't be proven, and I hadn't filed a police report. Then in June, in the wake of the We See You White American Theater movement, a Bay Area actor-director named Eli Sonny Urquiza, frustrated by seeing theater companies pay lip service to anti-racism while continuing to gauge in white supremacy in various ways, decided to take matters into his own hands. On June 20th, 2020, Eli published The Living Document, an open-source compendium of every theater company in the Bay Area, which there are over 300. The action was simple. Anyone in the Bay Area theater scene who had suffered a racist or otherwise objectionable incident could post their testimony under the name of the theater company where it happened. The document got 600 testimonials within 72 hours and is still going strong today. Currently, the show that I was assaulted on has 20 complaints registered against it in the living document. Complaint number 19 is mine, and it contains a laundry list of incidents ranging from that attempted assault to incidents of racism I endured and witnessed in connection with that show. Frustrated by the San Francisco Chronicle's inability or unwillingness to cover my story, I covered it myself in great detail. And then, rather than being anonymous, as so many of the people in the living document were encouraged to be, I signed off with "My name is Gabriel Montoya, by the way." And that's how David Mack found me for this panel. Eli Sonny Urquiza helped give a voice to the powerless in our industry with a call to action. And the rest of us answered that call and showed how powerful we all can be. Last year, the show I was assaulted on reopened yet another time, but this time, the SF Chronicle decided to revive our story and ran a piece about the abuse allegations ahead of their opening. The show closed after a short run and is yet to reopen. Coming out of this, I see the need for a reimagining of what a theater critic's job is when they aren't playing tastemaker for their local community. I see a need for more living documents, perhaps an integration of them with local theater organizations who need to do more to protect the unprotected in their communities, and a further dismantling of systems of oppression in general and white supremacy in particular. I encourage us all to decolonize our minds in order to decolonize the spaces we live and create in. If we're in the business of creating new worlds, we have to do so without that kind of mind. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Gabriel, for that sharing, and also want to acknowledge the emotional labor that it takes to share something like that so personally. So we value and acknowledge that as well. Just a few things to piggyback off of what you shared when you heard Gabriel talking about the living document. And as mentioned, a link to that is in our session in the app, if you'd like to take a look at it. Gabriel talked about it inspiring other similar movements, and it did indeed inspire a similar Los Angeles initiative called Blacklist, and continues to have ripple effects. So if you want to learn more about that, if you don't know already, feel free to engage in those resources. And also just want to quickly reflect on the idea of our critics and the world of journalism and arts journalism. And without going in depth into that, because we want to move on to our next sharing, it's one example of many examples of how these conversations and these experiences intersect in a variety of different fields. So it's the work that we're doing with each other in the space, but then it's all these other power dynamics, right? And these other industries and these other players that have the effect on what it means to be well and healthy and affirmed and protected in the work we do. So there's so much in there, but that's the two I wanted to uplift. Are you ready, Andrew? Okay, so we are going to gently segue into our next sharing. So I'd like to introduce Andrew Diego, professional actor, performer, based in Los Angeles. And I'll let you further introduce yourself and take it from there.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Andrew Diego, standing before you, about 5'11", wearing all black, and a black baseball cap, courtesy of the Jhia Jackson Together Again tour. So this is the first time I've spoken about all of this in quite some time, so bear with me. But so the details of my story have been well documented before. I'm not interested in this space to revisit all of the specifics of what transpired, as that information has been previously covered. That said, it was a situation where a person wielding a lot of power incorrectly felt that he could utilize sexuality and unwelcome behavior in whatever ways he pleased, that it was somehow charming and irreverent, and that it was an atmosphere we were expected to accept and participate in. This person was revered as an artistic director and an actor at a very notable LGBT theater company. He and I were to co-star together in a show, and it became very clear to me as soon as I got the part that something was really very off. His clout was in part built upon equating a queer, quote-unquote, safe space with overt sexuality, paired with a Cheshire cat-like mischievousness that he used to evade any accountability or consequence. Looks, glances, grazing my body backstage, horrendous comments that I will never forget. One being, moments before we took the stage, how the scene in The Accused starring Jodie Foster when she's gang raped is one that he masturbated to as a child. The artistic director. To paraphrase our stage manager, this is who he is. I can't really do much about it. Everyone's hands seem tied. Well, that was not acceptable to me. I don't care who you are. So I spoke up. The LA Times eventually covered it. An independent investigation took place, and based on those findings, he was eventually removed from that position. Did it affect my career and my life? Yes, absolutely. It wasn't an immediate blowback, but rather a slow burning shift in how I felt welcomed, seen, and perceived in the community, both positive and negative. Certainly there were people, producers, casting directors, other actors, organizations for whom this news and my speaking about it was too much. It wasn't something they could confront or choose to believe, let alone support, at least not publicly. I understood that. It didn't feel good, but I understood it. My instinct told me that this had long been a public secret, and everyone assumed that it wasn't ever going to be called out, and who would dare risk going up against someone like that? At first, my imagination filled in all the blanks. I'll never work again. I'll be sued. I will be branded as a troublemaker. No one will believe me. The list goes on. But soon, these private messages found their way into my inbox. At first, one or two, and then I was flooded. It was both encouraging and heartbreaking to hear from those who also experienced his misconduct in ways like mine, and some much more severe, over a span of close to 30 years, long before my ordeal. Detailed, shattering messages of gratitude and disbelief that this person had now been exposed. And the ironic thing is that what I experienced was far less egregious than many of what the other men who reached out to me went through. But my speaking out allowed them to break their own silences, even if only to me and to themselves. I cherish and safeguard each of those messages, and when I find myself wrestling With the voices that try to tell me I should have said nothing and did nothing, how much easier that would have been, I look back at how much the outcome of what I did means to all of them. And it's not even a question in my mind today. It was the right choice to make, despite all of the difficulties and sacrifices that came with it. It's brought me closer to the people who are aligned with my values and helped me to create boundaries with those who make me feel unsafe. So realistically speaking, yes, I have not worked in the same spaces as perhaps I once did. But for me, that's more than okay. That particular space and its culture was broken and deeply unsafe. My speaking out has cleared a path for it to be healed, reclaimed, and refocused by much better people who are leading it now. In the meantime, I've been busier in new and exciting facets of the industry and embrace those who respect me and my story, and that feels wonderful. It's led me to some of my most cherished relationships, both personal and professional. You know, speaking out against an industry titan in any industry is scary at first, especially in the immediate aftermath, because you have no way of knowing exactly how things will play out. You can't look into the future, and without having that concrete information, your mind does its best to convince you that the worst is coming, that you've ruined your life. I'm here to just encourage everyone and anyone who's contemplating speaking up and doing the right thing in whatever context you find yourself. Please know it will not break you, it will not end you, and it will not destroy you. Will there be a period of difficult shifts and an uncertain future? Absolutely. It won't always be easy, it will take time, it will challenge you and force you to find an inner strength that maybe you didn't realize you had. But with each passing day, week, month, year, it becomes easier, clearer, more stable, and a powerful source of strength and pride to draw upon. It may have ruffled feathers, but I take comfort knowing that a pattern of abuse was stopped in its tracks, and nobody can ever take that away. Speaking up was 1,000% worth it. I would do it all over again, no question, because we have to have each other's backs, protect one another, no matter what. And I am very grateful to all of you for letting me share with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, and also want to acknowledge the emotional labor on your part that you just endured to share that story, as well as leading up to this, the preparation to be so open, vulnerable, and clear in your sharing with us. The two quick things I want to uplift from what I'm hearing from you. One, when you talked about the idea of the experience and then learning on your journey, the experience that others have had spanning years. Right? I'm hoping what you're all hearing from this is the idea of if you're in a situation where you experience harm, chances are you're not the only one. Chances are that's not the first time that harm has happened. So the idea of those of us who have these experiences finding each other, mirrored with the idea that this is a systemic issue, but the idea of finding kindred spirits, whatever you want to call it, finding allies, is an important tool in achieving restorative justice and mitigating, if not completely resolving, mitigating and getting through the harm to the other side. And that's why we wanted also a big part of this message to be about what it's like on the other side of it and how we continue to not only survive but thrive in spite of it. Also wanted, I don't know if I told you, but I wanted to quickly share with the group how you did a social media post, a public social media post encouraging people to share experiences that they had of harms they've endured. I saw that social media post, and that's what inspired me to do this session. I don't know if I ever told you that, but that inspired this session. So again, just echoing, speaking out, it can make a difference. There are those of us out there watching, listening, hoping, that we can have these conversations and restore together. So thank you again, absolutely. Ready? Okay, we're gonna segue to Armina Lamana, a wonderful artistic director of a LA County-based theater organization. We've been buddies for over a decade in the trenches together, fighting the good fight to support artists throughout California, but particularly in Southern California. So Armina would love you to further introduce yourself. Also, feel free to reflect in the moment on what we've just been hearing, or anything during this day today, anything you want to reflect on. And then, yeah, if you'll share a little bit about the journey that led you to become an advocate for artists getting fair wages in Southern California theater.
Greetings, everybody. My name is Armina Lamana. I'm the artistic director of Imagine Theater. We are California's equity theater for young audiences. I'm very proud to have founded it with my friend Alex. I am 5'5" when I'm hooked up to a lie detector, and I'm 5'6" when I'm not. I have black long hair, and my bangs desperately need a haircut. I can barely see you. I'm just like my Bernedoodle today. And I am Armenian. I was born in Soviet Union, and my career in the theater began as a child actor there when I was 6 years old. So I'll be 47 this year, and last year I celebrated my 40th anniversary of working in the theater. And I am very excited to be here. I'm so glad I'm not with my children today. So yes, so thank you, David. Anytime, call. But I'm very excited to be here because I feel like when silence is what is dominant, we kind of disappear into obscurity. So I'm not the one to be silent, as my ex-husband will attest. But it's very important. It's very important for us to talk about things, because that is how things come to light. That is how they do not remain in a darkness, and that is how they stop haunting us, or hunting us, as I used to say before my English got better. So I just want to say thank you to you, gentlemen, for sharing today. I'm from Los Angeles, and we both went through something where we experienced what vitriol is like in a community that boasts liberal values most of the time. And so where were those values when we were going through all that, right? So I just want to say thank you so much for speaking and the moral courage that it takes to do. And I appreciate it, and we all do. So I want to tell you very quickly why I'm here, why David asked me to come. So in 2006, right after directing a show at the Fountain Theater, a week later, I moved to Philadelphia to go to graduate school. And when I was there, it was very exciting for me. I was directing a show for the Hollywood Fringe Festival. And when I was casting my lead actor, I called him and he said, so which equity contract are we doing this on? And me, being from LA, thinking that all of America is like that. And I'm like, the 99-seat theater plan. And he's like, the what? And I'm like, the 99-seat theater plan. It's like $7 for rehearsals, $7 per show. And he's like, what? He's like, no. He's like, I don't, what? He's like, no, there's no such thing. And I'm like, yeah, there is. He's like, no, there isn't. Long story short, I was very quickly educated that plague of artist-subsidized labor was really prevalent in Los Angeles. So when I was graduating from Temple University, where I got my MFA, I decided to return home and destroy that 99-seat theater plan. And I came back in May of 2009. I was in Directors Lab West that year, and I remember going back to the Fountain Theater and speaking to, was my mentor at the time, Simon Levy, not knowing that he was the leader of the 99-seat. I hadn't done my research yet. I just came back. And I stood there in the kitchen of the Fountain Theater, and he's like, so what are your plans now that you got your MFA? And I'm like, I'm going to destroy the 99-seat theater plan. And he looked at me and he said, no, that's not possible. So 6 years later, that thing was gone. And I will tell, all right, so it's like my mom always says, you can take a girl out of Soviet Union, but you can't take the Soviet Union out of a girl. But like, look, this is our vocation. We don't work for free. This is our vocation. This is what we do. And I'm constantly baffled by this, what to me is a disturbing notion that unless we suffer, we're not real artists and we're not creating real art. I want to murder that. I want to murder that notion that unless we're suffering, we're not creating real art. What utter nonsense is that? Utter nonsense it is. And I'm grew up in a communist country, people, where art was censored, and I'm telling you, it's nonsense. So I was jarred by my experience in Philadelphia, where in the 3 years I was there in graduate school, I made more money than in the 10 years I'd worked in Los Angeles theater. So I came back, I started finding people who thought like me. It took a little bit of time because people heard me say, hey, you know, the 99 theater plan, you want to help me end it? They were like, no, you're crazy. So it took me a while, but I found my people, because they do exist when you speak up. You will find your people. And together, we set out on a plan. Started with Reimagine LA Theater, and then it went on from there. And several of us sort of took the sword forward and started marching forward. And the first thing I did is I went to see attorneys. As a legal secretary, one of my day jobs, I knew labor law existed. So I went and I saw attorney after attorney after attorney after attorney, and it was armed with that knowledge that I think was the reason I was so hated for this, is that because I had facts. So I went and I started speaking to everybody who would listen to me. I started speaking with producers saying, here's the deal. Actors can have unions, therefore they are employees. They cannot be not paid. They cannot be volunteers. Anyway, so I will let Charles actually cover the legal stuff, because I'm not an attorney, but what I want you to take from this is that I stood up for what my vocation. I wanted to make sure that artist-subsidized labor died. I don't want it to exist. Because think about this, I had children at the time. If I was doing one show, that takes weeks, right? For me to pay for childcare, because I was a single mom, was $1,000 around at the time. So what, I had to pay $1,000 for childcare and not get paid? Who can do that? Tell me, who? Unless you're independently wealthy. You can't do that. So that puts people like me out of the running. Do you know how many friends I have in the theater who said, no, Armina, we can't have children. We decided it's theater or children. Do you know how many? I'm sure you know people like that. That shouldn't be. Why? Don't we deserve to have children and brainwash them in our own theatrical way? We do. Although my children's apples fell far away from the tree. So, but that's a different conversation. I want to thank you once again for having me here. And Charles is going to go after me, so I sort of open the door for him. But I just want to say, know your rights, especially now we live in a country where it's imperative for you to know the ground you're standing on, because people will try to shift it from under you. So, and yeah, storytelling, go.
Thank you so much, Armina. And before I give it to Charles, I'm just going to quickly say, well, first of all, when Armina talked about the vitriol she faced, and we faced, but mostly she faced, that word is doing a lot of work. It was a lot of toxicity that she endured for years. The reason I bring that up is because, in not small part because of Armina's efforts, not only did it initiate a sea change for artists to be paid as seen as the standard in Los Angeles theater, but was also part of the foundation that inspired the movement for budget initiatives, including SB 105 and SB 1116, which ultimately led to the Equitable Payroll Fund that California for the Arts supports, ensuring subsidies for artists to be paid as employees by their theater companies that get awarded these grants through the state Equitable Payroll Fund. So it's just so you all know the history and trajectory of how this type of work, can bear fruit and support artists. Kudos. All right, so we will segue to Charles McKenna. Charles McKenna, thank you so much for being with us. He is a partner at Kutak Rock, LLP, a prominent law firm in our region. I'll let him further talk about the type of law that he does, but Charles, I'd love you to also quickly reflect on what you heard, and even though he doesn't give specific legal advice, he is going to equip us with some best practices on knowing your rights and what to do if you do experience a harm in the workplace, where you can go to make sure that you're protected, or if you're witnessing something, that you can help support them to make sure that they're protected from the legal perspective, which we all should be equipped with this knowledge. So we're not going to be able to get into a lot of detail. It's just going to be top line, but wanted to give you a chance to briefly hear Charles sharing. All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David. And thank you for everybody and the whole team here. Tough act to follow there with both Armina and all the prior speakers. And And you know, I had a little bit of a script, but I'm going off script after hearing such powerful testimonials. What you've heard from each of the speakers, first of all, Charles McKenna, labor and employment lawyer for over 30 years. I started when I was 12. But I've been practicing long enough that I still use, you know, a good old yellow legal pad, not all the fancy bells and whistles. But what you've heard, and I'm going to go to what Brian said in his poem, there's that inherent conflict between true art and the arts industry, which is a business like any other business, right? And that's where the two clash and meet, where the true artist is not about the bottom line. The true artist isn't about trying to squeeze the last penny out of somebody working for them, but that's what the business is, because it's like every other business. And unfortunately, the arts community is uniquely susceptible to exploitation and being taken advantage of in that regard. And we could go on and on about this, and I'll be brief, but it's just the way it's set up, and the performances that are put on with a lot of people, you know, in a theater production, whatnot. It's got built-in risks that make artists even more at risk for not having their rights followed. What you've heard from the speakers, sometimes people don't understand that distinction between labor and employment law. Most lawyers who practice one practice the other. Well, what is the distinction? The first, Armina was talking about labor law, being paid what you're owed. The California Labor Code, even the federal standards, minimum wage, overtime, paid time off for family leave, paid time off for medical issues, being paid what you're owed at the time the relationship is severed. That's labor code stuff. Meal breaks, rest breaks. So that's what we call wage and hour law, more the labor code stuff. Employment law is the broader world of discrimination. And that covers everything from what you've heard today in terms of sexual harassment, but it's also broader, the discrimination laws, both federal and state. You can't be discriminated against based on your race, your gender identification, your sexual orientation, your age, your disability, your national origin, for being pregnant. As Armina was saying, what kind of culture do we have if we're penalizing people in the workplace for wanting and having a family? So there's the discrimination in the employment sense is much broader than the more blasé wage and hour stuff, but the industry, the arts industry, is susceptible to both. And what have you heard so far from some of the speakers is that the discrimination is based, you know, we all saw it in the Me Too movement, right? We've all heard the term the casting couch. It's a psychological power trip where the person, the boss, somehow believes that they can exploit and scare the worker out of fear of pulling the rug out of that worker's job and making that worker's job disappear like that if they don't go along with certain behaviors. Thankfully, both California and federal law is very strong in all this. And what's the theme? What are we here for today? This is the whistleblow. And you are protected. You are protected. It's so hard to speak out. And it's so hard. What do you do when you feel you're the one who's been, you're the victim, and you don't think anyone else is a victim? And what do? I can't pay the rent next week if I walk out the door at a protest. I mean, these are all the real world dilemmas that people who are victims of both discrimination and not being paid what they're owed are subjected to. All I can tell you is there are a lot of good lawyers in this state that are out there, And if you're ever in that type of situation, seek legal advice. You don't have to quit your job right away. You don't have to tell anybody you're not comfortable telling. Attorney-client communications are 100% privileged and private. An attorney would be disbarred if they ever revealed anything that you tell them without their express consent. So if you're ever in that type of situation, know that you are here in a jurisdiction, and we've come a long way. I mean, you're referring to recent statutory changes, and it's come a long way in just the last 10, 12 years especially, where there are more built-in protections. But, you know, one of the ones that I want to touch on very briefly, I know we're running out of time here, is the big movement today in labor law is what's called misclassification, where the entity wants to pay you as an independent contractor, but you're really an employee. They can't get away with not treating you like an employee, with all the rights that come with being an employee: minimum wage, overtime, rest breaks, meal breaks, all of that. They can't just say, oh, you got to be there at 7 in the morning and you leave at 7 at night, but you really only worked an hour, so here's an hour's, here's an hour's wage cash. They can't do that. And there are very, very strict laws that can be enforced against any business entity that misclassifies a worker as an independent contractor when they are indeed an employee. So you have a lot of protections on both the labor front in terms of getting paid the compensation to which you are entitled, and you also have a lot of protections in the employment law world as far as being discriminated against and being retaliated against for reporting discrimination. That in and of itself is illegal. You are 100% protected as a whistleblower. So keep that in mind, and I wish I could joke about it or do something lighthearted, but this is pretty serious stuff, because we're talking about exploitation, and we're talking about someone in power depriving another person of their rights, and that's pretty serious stuff. And we want all industries to be immune from that, but especially your industry, where there's a heightened risk of exploitation. So if you ever find yourself in that bind, please feel free to seek legal advice, because there are many, many very good labor and employment lawyers in California who would be more than willing to help you out. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. And as mentioned, there's a link to California Lawyers for the Arts. Now, they don't provide pro bono legal services right up front like that. Sometimes that's an assumption that people make, but they do have links to resources that they can help you with, and other services, professional development services that they provide. Thank all of our panelists. Let's give them another round of applause for the sharings. As we close, I'm quickly going to do the closing housekeepings. I'm going to put up a QR code to a GoFundMe. This is a GoFund. Let's see. I'll widen it a little bit. At your tables, you may see QR codes at your tables, and there's also one here if you want to scan. This is a legal defense fund to support artists who may experience retaliation from their sharings, also supporting artists who do whistleblow, initiate whistleblower complaints to the state, California, the paperwork that gets involved, travel, and also expenses for artists and panelists to come and share their stories like this. So if you are so moved and in a position, you can feel free to support that legal defense fund through Artist Magnet Justice Alliance GoFundMe. Also, if you'll indulge me quickly, I want to leave on a note of talking about accountability, how we can find accountability accountability from those in positions of power, and I feel moved to do a personal sharing of mine to give you an example of a little journey of mine and what I found in terms of some of those who do hold power in our community. So one of my previous employers was a company called Heidi Duckler Dance. Heidi Duckler's husband, Daniel Rosenfeld, physically abused me and a female employee while I worked there. I reported it to my supervisor at the time. There was not accountability done. Heidi Duckler, I was, in terms of the labor violations, misclassified me as an independent contractor, even though I was working as an employee, deprived me of overtime, Social Security benefits, workers' compensation, paid sick leave. These were things I didn't learn in art school. I didn't know that these were that I was being deprived of these rights. She was frequently intoxicated in the workplace. She would berate us employees. She would throw pens and other objects at us to the point where an employee had to tell her that she needed to stop. That employee ended up resigning. She gave her prescription drug medication to her dancers in order to keep them performing in rehearsal, or I should say, to be specific, one of her dancers, while they had an injury. She continued to persist to do that rehearsal after rehearsal after rehearsal until they became dependent on her medication. They ended up then becoming dependent on drugs for years. And she misidentified herself as a choreographer. She didn't choreograph work that she would receive public grant funding from. They were in fact choreographed by her, mostly her dancers of color, but they did not receive credit for the work, which is we found out later is a violation of those grant contracts. And she would use some of those funds to pay for her personal BMW lease payments, and then yell at us when we discovered that. So that's just a few examples. So really toxic environment. We reported this to the board of directors. We reported this to funders, to the California State Attorney General's office. This is the very open secret in the dance world in Los Angeles. Accountability has not yet arrived for her. Those people in positions of power, it's well-meaning, but the takeaway for me is it really is systemic. And this system is not designed to support and center artists. It's designed to support and center people in positions of power. But I would like to close on a high note, okay? after dumping that on you. That's the toxicity part. The high note is we found each other, similar to what Andrew shared. As I started to try and seek my own accountability in what became a multi-year effort, I got connected to dozens of other artists and other arts administrators that Heidi Duckler and her powerful brokers had endured and inflicted. And we built solidarity with each other, and we became a collective. And we have been continuing to speak out, and we've been forging and building new relationships, and we've been forging and building our own co-productions, and we've been grant writing for our own projects, and through mutual aid supporting each other's work. And so that's one positive and silver lining I was able to get out of it. But in terms of the accountability, the takeaway is we all have a role to play. If you're a funder, if you're on a board, if you witness something, if you're an audience member and you're a donor, we all have a role to play to make sure these organizations are getting beyond the rhetoric on the website and really making sure that they are ensuring health and wellness for the artists that we're all serving. That's where we're going to end it, all right? Thank you all. Now, if you'd like, I think there's another session coming. So you can continue to we won't be able to be here to have the conversation, but we can bring the conversation outside as you all are going to your next session. Thank you again, y'all. Have a good rest of the summit. Enjoy.